the zoning board of appeals meeting, February 23rd. Let me get started with a roll call vote here. Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Faia,
Here.
Mr. Swaim,
Here.
and Ms. Akers-Moore here. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Whoever is presenting for Quarry North tonight, Mr. Henchy, is that you or?
Madam Chair, probably. Chris, why don't I just grab the helm? So, Bill Henchy, attorney for the applicant Quarry North Road. I'm an attorney with offices in Orleans, down on Cape Cod. With me is Chris Clausen, who is a principal in the applicant, and Matthew Leidner, who is the project engineer. Madam Chair, when we were here last, we had an extensive discussion with the board. And the discussion sort of centered on, as we concluded, a suggestion by the board that perhaps some reductions in height and roof lines would get us where the board was comfortable voting approval. And if we could accomplish that, we would ask for that approval. In particular, Mr. Faia indicated that if we could reduce those ridge lines by 3 to 4 feet, he would achieve a comfort level where he would feel that he could vote to approve. So what we did was both Matt Leidner and Chris Clausen went to work in their respective areas. And if I could share my screen, I think I can walk you through what we've been able to do. And I hope you'll be pleased, because it's I think we've gotten fairly substantially where we need to be.
Yeah, can you share, or do you
Sure.
need to do something?
Okay. All right. Can the board see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Most importantly, can Mr. Faia see the screen? Because this is directed to him to a large degree. So I think we've been able to achieve what we were asked to do, and then some. We've done a couple of things. With regard to the buildings themselves, Chris went back to the architectural group, and we adjusted the pitch of the roofs substantially. We're dropping the pitch of the duplex down to a 6 pitch, 6 out of 12. And excuse me, with regard to the other buildings, we're dropping that pitch to a 7 out of 12. So let me start with the duplex, because that was the one that seemed to be in the beginning the most difficult, but I understand we want to address all of these. So the board might recall that a couple of meetings ago, we proposed to relocate that duplex 15 feet closer to Rookery Lane to pull it back from the ridge and to save a number of trees that otherwise would have been felled in the construction. So that relocation saved 23 trees from the original proposed location. And all of these elevations, by the way, are from the top of foundation, because those are the elevations shown in the plan. And as we've discussed at length, the existing grades are a hodgepodge of what's left over from the excavation. So these are all elevations from the top of foundation. We were originally proposing, as you might recall, 35 feet, all of these. So with regard to the duplex, we can drop that height of the ridge line from 30 feet, 6 inches as measured from the top of foundation. So that, in addition to moving that back away from the edge of the ridge, that drops that particular roof by 4.5 feet over what was proposed initially. On the single family units, those are the remainders. We've dropped the pitch to a 7 pitch. We can't really get it as flat as we could with the duplex, because it's a different design. So with regard to all of the different plan proposals, the plan C can be dropped to 31 feet, 1 inch and 1/8. So that gets us down 3 feet, just 10 7/8. The plan H can be dropped down to 31 feet and 3/8 of an inch, which gets you down 3 feet, 11 inches and 5/8. The K plan, which was the trickiest of them all, we can drop that to 32 feet and 5/8 of an inch. So that gets you 2 feet, 11 inches and 3/8 in reduction in building height. And the W plan can be reduced to 31 feet, 7 inches and 3/8, which gets you 3 feet, 4 inches and 5/8. Now, with regard to the grades, Matt Leidner was able to go back. Let me just switch a screen over here just for a second. This is the grading plan. And I'm showing this to show the board the top of foundation elevations for these two.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Let me see if it'll move for me. I don't want to lock up my computer. This is always a tricky business. Can the board see what's on my screen?
Bill, if you right click your cursor, you change it from to a hand. You need to change it to a hand so you can grab it. Right.
Thank you. Okay. So, all right. So if I direct the board's attention to the ends of the roads, sort of this corner here by this corner down here, which is much lower in elevation, down by the that's over by the Sudbury line by the wastewater treatment plant. The engineering is kind of tied to those elevations at each end. But in the middle, so that would be with regard to these two homes here, number 3 and 4. Matt is able to drop the elevations in those locations by an additional 18 inches. So when he does that, here's where we end up. The house locations at 3 and 4 are reduced by, and I'm going from the highest plans to the lowest plans, at least 4 feet, 5 inches and 3/8 with the K plan, or 5 feet, 5 inches and 5/8. Those are the reductions in height over what was proposed earlier. With regard to the other two, we really can't, because of the grades over there, adjust the elevations, because we would result in a very steep grade here. It would be well in excess of 5% to get down. But I want to point out that these homes over here are all tucked significantly behind the ridge. I don't know whether you can see the top of foundation elevation here, but this one is 152.50. And the top of the ridge here is at 160, it goes up to 164 back in that location. So this house is already 12 feet below the ridge as proposed. And this one here, the top of foundation is 145.50. And my recollection is the top of the ridge over here is at 154. So this one is 8.5 feet below the ridge. So with regard to the homes that are really, I think the ones that are of most concern and the ones that are highest relative to the existing ridge, this one will come down 4.5 feet over what was initially proposed. That's the duplex. This one will come down either 4.5 feet or 5.5 feet, depending on which style is chosen. And the same thing would be true here. This one will come down 4.5 feet or 5.5 feet. So that's what we've been able to do. I can tell the board with all sincerity, this was a lot. And this is it. We're unable to make any additional adjustments on the plan. So we hope we've achieved what you asked us to do. I'll put this summary table back up so you can see where we came down. And I'm hopeful that's satisfactory to the board. And we'd like to see if we can get your approval and talk about how we can reduce this to a permit that the board can sign.
Great, thank you. Let me just put it out to the board. Perhaps Mr. Faya.
Well, just one quick question, which is the buyer the one who selects which plan house they prefer?
Yes, that's the way yes.
Great. Yeah, I do appreciate the work that you guys did. I think it's what I was looking for. And I had appreciated that you had addressed other concerns that the public had raised, such as saving some of the trees on the ridge, providing us more information on the groundwater issue. That the height and massing was the one where I felt we needed a little more. And I think what you've done is significant, and I think it gets me over the line here. So, based on this, I am happy to vote with the rest of the board here if they are still where they were at our last meeting, which I think was in favor of approval. Elizabeth, I didn't know if you did want to have one more round of public comment or not at this point.
I was gonna take one more round of public comment. Yes. I'm assuming it's gonna be brief, but before I do that, let me ask Mr. Smith, Mr. Swaim, anything else to add?
I'll jump in with a question. I'm sort of with Bobby here in terms of appreciating the effort. And so I just want to ask Elizabeth Hughes or the board or whatever, the practical question of the fact that ordinarily, before we would make an approval of something like this, we would have sort of the final drawings and the final, packet of information that that was produced here in many forms, and to be able to touch and feel and ask whatever questions. So I'm just curious, either Elizabeth Hughes or Mr. Henchy, what we envision in terms of that part of this sort of documentation piece.
Sure, Madam Chair, or do you want Elizabeth?
You can go first, Mr. Henchy, and then we'll see what Elizabeth says.
Sure. Well, I certainly anticipated the question. There's a fair amount of work that needs to go into getting these plans redone. So in all candor, we didn't want to do that if we didn't have an understanding that the board was in agreement. And there's a time component. This was quick, and we appreciate the board's consideration. So what I would suggest is the board take a vote to approve, subject to receipt of final plans, which we would submit to Elizabeth, and subject to the drafting consideration, which I assume Elizabeth does in the ordinary course. We haven't had that conversation because we haven't gotten to this point yet. And then we get that done between now and the next hearing, and then the board take a vote to issue the permit at that point in time, and then thereafter file with the town clerk in the ordinary course. If that's agreeable to the board, that was my answer to the same question that popped into my head this afternoon as well.
Great. Elizabeth?
I don't have any issue with that. Generally, the board would, if you were to move forward and vote to approve, it would be based on the planning board's recommendation letter and the findings made in that letter, along with the additional findings that the board has made these past few meetings, the lowering of the height and the moving of the duplex and the additional groundwater information, and adopting those conditions that were referenced in the planning board's letter. I would draft that decision for the board to review at your next meeting in 3 weeks. And during that time frame, the applicant can submit the revised plans.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's all I have, but that's the question I have.
And Madam Chair, I'll submit the document that I put on the screen into the office for the board's records as well. So you have that. And then Elizabeth can obviously check the plans we submit to be sure that we're complying with what we just put forward.
Great. Mr. Swaim, anything to add?
No, I stated my thoughts last meeting. I'm very pleased with what I see here. So I'm, I think it's a great project.
Great. Given the public interest, I think I will throw it open to public comment, so we can have a discussion if we need to. So let me go ahead and do that. Is there anyone who would like to speak?
Yeah,
Mr. Parker, yes.
okay, I first wanted, I have a
First, if
question
you
for
could say your
Bill.
name and address.
Jeff Parker, 315 Plainfield Road.
Great.
I have a question for Bill, but first I would like to thank the board for being so thorough. It was very stalwart of you. I appreciate it. And I'm sure the neighborhood appreciates it. So Bill, you gave some numbers from the top of the foundation compared to the top of the ridge. Do you know the numbers for the top of the roofs compared to the top of the ridge?
Technically go through me, so I will,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, it's
Yeah.
all right. I will go to you, Mr. Henchy, if you have that answer.
I mean, I guess if I'm understanding the question correctly, when you use the word ridge, Mr. Parker, are you referring to the ridge on the ground or the ridge of the building? I guess I don't
Yeah, the
understand.
roof line, the top of the roof line.
So those would be the numbers I provided. That would be from the top of the foundation to the top of the ridge line of the house would be the numbers that I provided.
Oh, I know, but I thought you had some numbers for the top of the ridge behind the house to the top of the foundation. You gave those two numbers.
You mean the actual ridge of the?
Yeah, I maybe I
not the
misunderstood
house.
you. I thought you were giving numbers for the top of the ridge line.
No. Well, I will say this with regard to numbers 5 and 6, the ones that are substantially below that existing ridge line. Off the top of my head, what do we have? Let me just take a quick look, if I might, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Over there. So number 5, top of the foundation is 152.5. And the ridge in that location was, I believe.
You use the word berm, berm.
Okay. Yeah, why don't we do that? Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
So the top of the berm over there was at 165. So the first floor is located, I use a joke. I understood there would be no math. Well, we're talking 12 and a half feet below. So the first floor is 12 and a half feet below the top of the berm with regard to home site number 5. With regard to number 6, that top of foundation is 145.5. And over there, we're at 154. So that is 8.5 feet. So the top of the berm is 8.5 feet above the first floor elevation in that location. With regard to number 4, where we're dropping top of the foundation 18 inches from 156.5, so that's coming down to 155. And the top of the berm in that location is roughly the same. Matt, if you got it quicker than me, I'm looking at roughly one
65.
Yeah, it's same height over there. And then it becomes closer as you go move to the west, where the duplex is sort of slightly below the top of the berm. I think, Matt, what are we, about 6 or 7 feet below the top of berm with that top of foundation over there. And then I think it's roughly the same on number 3. So as Matt Leidner has indicated, each of these are set a little lower than the existing berm. And now we brought the tops of the buildings down by the amounts I just gave you.
Yeah, so, but just to be clear, the tops of the buildings will be 15 to 20 feet in most instances over the top of the berm, correct?
No, when you go down to the east, you're going to be 10 to 15 feet above the top of the berm, I think, with the top of the ridge height.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
And over on the furthest side, the duplex, that height is probably 20 feet or so above the top of the ridge.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Any other comments? Oh, Mr. Madigan.
Yes, I just had a quick question.
Sure. Could you just give your name and address?
Absolutely, sorry about that. Jack Madigan, 215 Prairie Street. Had a
Great.
quick question with regard to Elizabeth Hughes. I thought reading the original planner's report, the two issues that were stopping this project from going forward was no accessible road and no access via Concord roads.
So that's not for the plan, that's not for the PRD or the special permit before the zoning board of appeals. That's an issue with a definitive subdivision plan before the planning board. They're two separate applications.
Two separate, and so this one here, I apologize. This one here is for the PRD or for the,
Correct.
okay. So and it's for the same project, but are they running whichever one finishes first, or what are we? they two different
Basically, they're two different tracks for a project to move forward. And this is the one they have chosen to move forward with. The subdivision was submitted first, and then they went forward after discussing with town staff with submitting the special permit for the PRD.
Okay, so with the PRD, we get to bypass the fact that there's no access via Concord roads and the original issues. That wasn't just for any new development. That was just for a subdivision, not for
Correct.
PRD.
Correct.
Okay. It seems like that was an oversight. Is that not from the planner's standpoint? Was that an oversight in terms of when we did, and I'm talking about the bylaw itself?
Nope, because one is under subdivision control law and the subdivision rules and regs for the planning board, and the other is a zoning matter which is a discretionary special permit. They're two separate applications and two separate documents and rules and regs that deal with both.
Got it. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. I don't see any. I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. I just want to thank everyone who wrote. I've been reading everything. Mr. Parker, I appreciate everything you've been writing and saying and have been really thinking about it. And I am comfortable with what's been done here. Comfortable in the sense that I think that as a practical matter, it's not going to be you get nothing here or you get, I think we're at the best kind of balance right now of where we've been able to push back and get some things, understanding that the land will be developed. So I am happy with where we landed on this. If someone wants to go ahead and give a motion, I'm ready for it.
Motion to approve a special permit for Quarry North Road LLC under zoning bylaws sections 10, 11, 6, and 11, 8 for a PRD for 6 units at 48Y Fitchburg Turnpike, adopting the recommendations of the planning board as supplemented by the additional findings that the ZBA has made and subject to all the conditions recommended by the planning board, and that the applicant will submit revised plans to the town planner to reflect the information provided tonight. Elizabeth, am I missing anything else?
No, I think it is correct me if I'm wrong, Elizabeth, it's the intention for the decision. I will draft a decision for the board to review at your next meeting. And the applicant can discuss with the board the final conditions of approval.
So we're voting to approve, but on the condition that we're going to vote on the final decision at our next meeting.
Right.
Correct.
It's got to reflect it's got to reflect the understanding everyone has.
Yep.
Okay, Robbie, I think you got everything. There were some things mentioned in
Second.
previous meetings, but yep. Great. All in favor, Mr. Faya,
Aye.
Mr. Smith,
Aye.
Ms. Chris Moore. Aye. Thank you all for all of your work on this, and I guess we will still see you back at the next meeting.
Madam Chair, at the risk of being a pick, because should always take yes for an answer. Was there a second to the motion? Because I'm not sure I heard a second.
Yes.
I
Mr.
seconded it.
Smith seconded it.
And
Okay.
do we also need, I guess we don't. I guess because we don't have a public hearing, we're just reviewing the decision. We don't need any kind of motion to.
Continue. or anything.
No, you have 90 days in which to file your decision after the close of the public hearing. So you're fine.
Got it.
Okay. I just want to make sure we didn't have a posting problem.
No, that would be with the planning board's public hearing for town meeting, which will not happen on March 7th. Just so you know, it's going to happen at the end of March because the posting was done. We had issues with the posting, so.
All right.
So,
Oh,
thank
Thank you.
Thank you very
I
much.
have any follow-up questions,
you.
Elizabeth. Thanks.
And when
All
is,
right.
the-
Good
when is
night,
the next,
everyone.
when is the next meeting? Just so I can put it on my calendar?
23rd of March.
23rd? Okay. All right, we'll see you in a few weeks.
See you then. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you very much. Good
Bye,
evening.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
That's all.